the Miami Heat, they have won 6 of their last 7 games. They have beaten the Kings, the Lakers, the Thunder, the Raptors, the Jazz, and the Atlanta Hawks. So, I mean, they are finally getting on a roll. Can they replicate the success they had last season coming into these playoffs, or how far do you think they will finish in the standings this season?
Well, I love to troll the Heat every day when they lose. I'm not going to troll them today, though, because Jimmy and Bam are not playing. So I am not going to troll them today. I don't think they're going to replicate last year. I think last year was a great run, a great story. But I think just this year, with the big three in Brooklyn, with the newly revamped Bucks, even Miami, even Boston, I don't think Miami's as good as it was last year. I think this year we're losing those wings that were able to defend 1 through 4 is going to be tough. I think they're a second-round team at best. I just think with Joel Embiid playing the way he's playing, Philly's going to be tough. The Bucks are going to be tough. The Nets, they aren't going to beat the Nets. Boston's going to be a tough series. So I have them as a second-round push. I think Jimmy Butler could definitely get them there. But with this team, I don't think this team is just good enough. I think Goran Dragic, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, good players, but they have a defensive deficiency where they put those guys out there, and defensively they just can't keep up. And Jimmy Butler, he has to do so much for this team offensively and defensively. I don't think it's going to be enough.
Yeah, I think when you talk about replicating last year's success, I don't think there's any way they end up back in the finals this year just because, one, the Nets, which is going to be the benchmark for anybody trying to get to the finals. And then you also got the 76ers and the Bucks. The 76ers are majorly improved from last year, and, knock on wood, they'll be going into the playoffs healthy, unlike last year.
Don't jinx it.
And the Bucks, I think the Bucks improved with the addition of Drew Holiday, and although they have that game plan in place to stop a guy like Giannis, a lot went wrong with the Bucks last season, and they added shooters this season. So it's a totally different team they got to deal with. Do I think the Heat could pull off an upset of the Bucks? Yeah, I could see that. But even if they do that, then you got to get through Brooklyn to go to the finals. I can't see them pulling off 2 upsets like that in a row. And that's why I don't see them having any chance of replicating last year. I think they could go on a run here and maybe pull off 1 upset, surprise some people, but I don't see them making a finals run.
I agree. I don't think they will make the finals because Brooklyn is going to make it. No doubt about it. But I think that when you talk about how far they can go, it really depends on the matchups. I mean, I don't even care about their record. They are 17-18 right now. That might change.
Scratch the record.
That might change if they lose to the Pelicans tonight, but they're going to make the playoffs. So we talked about it before. The Miami Heat will make the playoffs, no doubt about it. Jimmy is healthy. Jimmy right now, I believe, is averaging 22, 9, and 9 in the last 7 games during this win streak. He's shooting 33% from 3, which is a big improvement from where he was when he started this season. But it's about matches. When you look at the 6th seed, they're the 6th seed right now. Who would they play? They would play the Milwaukee Bucks. Can they beat the Milwaukee Bucks in a 7-game series? Absolutely they can. They have the personnel to do it. They have the players to do it. And I think Miami kind of has a mental edge on the Bucks right now. Just based off last season. I know they got Drew Holiday, Bryn Forbes, and Torrey Craig. They brought in some new guys like Bobby Portis as well. But I just feel like Miami has a mental edge over the Bucks. But if you want to go the safer route, I think Miami has to get that 5th seed to possibly face the Knicks in the first round, which I think they can beat, or pretty much face the Raptors if they get them, or the Celtics. I think they can beat the Celtics as well. But if we're talking about Philly, how Philly's playing right now, I don't think Miami can beat Philly. How Brooklyn is playing, nobody's going to beat Brooklyn. They cannot beat Brooklyn. So I think they can beat Milwaukee, Boston, and everybody else. But outside of the top teams, they can't, outside of the top teams, they can beat everybody in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. And they're so well coached. Eric Spoelstra does such a great job. They have that veteran leadership. They have guys who have been there. So when it comes to the playoffs, they're going to be a different team, especially, like I said, knock on wood, if they can stay healthy come playoff time. But it's just those top teams. Like, I definitely don't think they have the firepower to compete with the Nets. The Sixers, it would be tough because, again, their personnel this season matches up very well with the Heat. I think that would be an incredibly tough matchup for him. And even the Bucks, the way they changed their personnel this season, I think would be another tough matchup. One of the biggest things last year was when Giannis would drive and kick, guys weren't knocking down shots in that series. Now they added some shooters around him, so I think it would be a bit of a different outcome. But, beyond those three teams, I could see him beating anybody. I think the rest of the East from there is a bloodbath. Like, it's anybody's guess from there. I mean, the Celtics, if they go out and add a Vucevic, maybe things get a little bit more interesting. But beyond those top three seeds in the East, I think it's anybody's game.
If the Celtics add Vucevic, Miami can't beat them.
I would agree with that. I would be very interested to see if the Celtics did that. And
they add Vucevic,
and what they would have to give up to get him. Because if I was them, I would not give up Marcus Smart.
Kemba?
I know if they could, I would do that before the Magic hung up the phone. That would be a double win.
Miami, I can see I can see them beating Boston. I don't know if it's just Boston's been struggling, but like we said, scratch record, playoff time, 7-game series. With Jaylen Brown improving, Kemba's been playing good. It's going to be a tough series. They have the mental edge over the Bucks, but adding shooters is going to be tough for them. It's really just going to come down to how much Jimmy Butler is going to be able to carry them. And the year 2 improvement in the playoffs of Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo, how they're going to play in the playoffs. But I think with them having the I do think they have the personnel to beat Philly. It's just going to come down to come playoff time. Is Joel Embiid still going to have that switch on? Is Ben Simmons going to be a little bit better than what he's been doing? Tobias Harris, he's going to be consistent. If the shooters are going to hit shots, then I think they don't have any chance to beat Philly. Same thing with Milwaukee. If Giannis has that switch on, if the shooters are hitting. But I think top to bottom, they have the personnel to beat the top teams outside of the Brooklyn Nets. It's just if they're going to do it. They have been struggling. The guys have been in and out of the lineup, so it's going to be hard, and you're going to have to rely on Jimmy Butler a lot this playoffs. But if you could do it outside of Jimmy, Joel Embiid, and Giannis, Jimmy has shown the ability that you can count on him. So I wouldn't count them out.
I mean, teams have figured out Miami's offense this season at least. I mean, this season they're 26 in points per game. What's carrying them to wins right now is their defense. They're 5th in opponents' points per game. They're 25th in offensive rating and 8th in defensive rating. So I don't know what it is. I mean, when I've seen Miami play this season, I don't think they're moving the ball nearly as well as they did last season. That unselfishness and that magic that they had last season is not translated to this season. And I think teams have been guarding Duncan Robinson a little bit better. And because of that, I mean, he was a huge part of their success. But when you talk about personnel, I mean, this is the same Miami team they had last season. Just switch out Derrick Jones Jr., Jay Crowder, who I think Jay Crowder was their biggest loss. But Avery Bradley has not played yet. When he plays, I think we can possibly see a better defensive team and a better offensive team because Avery Bradley can space the floor as well.
Yeah, and we also got to remember they're going through that kind of 71-day off-season hangover that I think everybody really was expecting, but we didn't know how it was going to hit, and I feel like it's really affected the Heat injury-wise and also just play-wise, which you could kind of combine those two because having Jimmy Butler miss pretty much half the start of the season, the young guys had to take on more of a responsibility. They were slumping in increased roles, so it's been tough for them to find their footing. I think if they could get everybody back healthy, it would be, they would be a much tougher team. But we got to see them get everybody on the floor first.
Yeah, and like you said, with Duncan Robinson, people would figure out because he hasn't really developed his game. He's kind of been the same player as last year, just a simple off-the-screen catch. He has to develop his game. And what Avery Bradley has been missing, but if you plug Avery Bradley in the lineup, you take out one of your best shooters. And if you keep your best shooters in, that's when teams in the fourth go hunting. They hunt for Tyler Herro. They hunt for Duncan Robinson because they're bad defenders. They're the easiest defenders to hunt for. So if you plug Avery Bradley in, you take out one of your best shooters. So it's going to be tough to assess them, but I do think getting that 5th seed is going to be key because they can beat the Knicks. It's not going to be an easy 4 or 5 game series, but they can beat the Knicks. I think they can beat Indiana. Any other teams, 8th seed of Charlotte gets in, they'll beat Charlotte. So I think that 5th seed, getting there 5th, 4th is going to be key. But if they get 4th or 5th and Brooklyn ends up 1st, it's over in the second round. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for them. I have them as a second round exit.